My team brought a mummy's voice back to life. Written by M. Kelley. As someone fascinated with the past, recreating broken artifacts and long-past people is my passion. From the first time I saw a computer-generated composite based on bone structure and region, I knew it would be my noble pursuit. I found my way into archaeology and anthropology. Recently, I found myself in a position to take part in a world first, reviving a dead man's voice. We would scan the vocal tract of an Egyptian mummy, notable for their impressive preservations, and then use 3D printing technology to recreate the physical structures responsible for his voice. I already knew where to start. The institution I work with has access to a priest from Ramesses XI's reign by the name of Myuu. Myuu had been mummified like many powerful Egyptians in pursuit of eternal life. Priests in Egypt had powerful voices for singing prayers and other holy words, not unlike a priest during Mass. Using a combination of mapping and medical imaging tools, we found that his voice box and vocal cords were still mostly intact. Careful measurements and calculations took place to bring them back to life. With the recreated vocalization hardware in hand, we attached an artificial larynx. Power was adjusted to a frequency we extrapolated to be most similar to what Myuu's living body would have produced. A single syllable carried through the lab. We allowed the sound to continue for several seconds. The more historically inclined group, including myself, found themselves moved to tears. After 3,000 years of rest, we brought his voice back to people's ears. The engineers cheered and celebrated their own prowess. I hunkered down and admired the marvel we had come together to create. The practical aspects were not lost to me. Perhaps widows would hear their long-lost husbands' voices again. Long-dead authors reading their own works. The team was already convening how to add tongue and teeth interference to improve fidelity, modeling the modulations necessary to form entire words. I joined them to add my 2 cents about culturally important songs from his time that we could actually hear. None of us were aware. The rumble of our own hubris drowned out the fact that his voice still carried through the laboratory. The shade of our rose-colored glasses dulled the golden light coming from the synthesized voice box behind us, at least until a second syllable tore through our workspace. Our electronics rained showers of sparks, and golden hieroglyphics cropped up like graffiti on a subway train. Kyle, one of our engineers, ran over and completely disconnected the voice box from the artificial larynx. He also removed all power sources from the hardware. Others were disconnecting power strips to other equipment. He laughed it off as a hardware malfunction or a power surge. He didn't notice the voice box still glowed. He didn't notice Myuu's glowing voice box burning his hand until the smell of roasted flesh danced in his nostrils. I watched, but my voice was squelched when I tried to alert the others. He tried to scream, but his own voice was silenced by the golden aura that filled his mouth. A stream of blood from each eye rolled down his cheeks. His body stumbled forward a half step. The new syllable rang from inside of him, from the golden light. The rest of the team tried to run, but the doors on both ends of the lab wouldn't budge. The windows were blacked out, both to the world and on the interior doors. Kyle took another clumsy half-step. I was still unable to yell, unable to move. One of his colleagues sprinted towards him with the gusto of a point guard slamming a three-pointer into the ground, slammed his hand into the voice box. Kyle looked at him with the utmost curiosity as the young man started screaming, his hands smoking and his fingers twisted into a gnarled claw. I could see one of my colleagues slamming a lab stool against the glass that allowed observations from the hallway. Kyle started lumbering towards her, the syllable floating from his open mouth, modulating into different tones. He jammed one of the edges of Niseamun's voice box into her throat. She sputtered and choked while a hot spray of blood flowed into the voice box. I was unfrozen by a violent cramp as my stomach turned and I threw up in my mouth. I ran up behind him and kicked the back of his knee as hard as I could. He crumpled to the ground and Niseamun's voice box bounced across the room. Kyle held his throat and wheezed. The girl he attacked slumped over on a table. The voice box modulated faster and faster, syllables alternating and changing in some kind of chant. Golden light still spilled from it. I didn't want to touch it, but something had to happen. A wet, infant-sized hand reached forth from the glowing opening. I stomped it out. I blacked out as I slammed my foot into the plastic and into the small appendage. Campus security had arrived by the time I was aware of my surroundings again. The voice box was little more than a seemingly uncountable amount of plastic shards and a small puddle of blood. Campus security couldn't make heads or tails. The city police couldn't do much better. Kyle recovered, but has been out of contact since the incident. We think he wants to put it out. The young lady that he stabbed with Niseamun's voice box is also recovering, though she's going to have years of therapy to regain her speech. I've been back in the lab a few times to meet with the team. Some want to continue. They think it was simply a mental break on Kyle's part. They didn't see the hand. No one wants to believe, and I can't believe they can't still hear that 3,000-year-old chant amongst the hum of electronics, still in that laboratory.